Welcome to Luminocity, everyone. I'm Andy Kraft.
And I'm Jordan Stevens. Thanks for joining us. Today, Luminosity is spotlighting Feeding Charlotte, which is helping the city of Charlotte rescue food waste by connecting excess food that would otherwise be wasted to local nonprofit organizations that serve people who are food insecure and or homeless. So we're here today with the Executive Director of Feeding Charlotte, Mendy Godman, and the Director of Food Recovery Operations, Aprill. Mendy is originally from Spartanburg, South Carolina, but has been in Charlotte for the past 20 years, so basically a Charlotte native. After spending some time in the corporate world and raising two kids, she now has the opportunity to pursue her passion of helping others, specifically the homeless and the hungry, with Feeding Charlotte. And Kim also moved to Charlotte roughly 20 years ago from Buffalo, New York in 2001 to pursue a career as a clinical social worker. She worked for several years as a case manager and mental health therapist with children and families until she decided to stay home with her two young children. And she has always had a passion for helping others and feels that feeding people is one of the greatest expressions of love. And Kim, you're actually how I was first introduced to Feeding Charlotte. So I was a coach for C20 this year. And so I watched as you practiced your presentation and gave your congratulations on being a finalist. And thank you all so much for, absolutely. Thank you so much for what you're both doing in the community. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I think, many people have heard of the term food insecurity, and, it's a big problem in Charlotte and really many large cities across the country. But just so that everyone understands like what that really means and how big of a problem that is, could you guys maybe kind of define what food insecurity is for us and for our listeners?
Sure, I can do that. So food insecurity basically means that you don't know where your next meal will be coming from. And in Mecklenburg County, 35% of households with children are food insecure. So that can affect anything from their health, their mental health, their stability, anything like that. So it is a huge problem in Mecklenburg County and in the U.S. in general.
And how would you say that, did you actually become aware of that, both just in general and here at Charlotte, and become involved with this cause?
Well, I was just personally, I think just being involved and maybe even having children opened my eyes to this. Before we created Feeding Charlotte, I worked as a volunteer on the Monday lunch team at Urban Ministry. And so you saw every day 300 trays were served every single day for lunch. And it's very eye-opening. It's all demographics. It's all walks of life. So you realize that this isn't an issue for a certain group of people. This is everyone. One small circumstance can change our whole trajectory. And then we're at Urban Ministry. So it's huge in our city. And again, having kids in the school system, one Friday I delivered through Second Harvest red backpacks that are filled with boxed and canned goods for these children to get through the weekend. And one Friday, I think in my child's elementary school, I delivered 56 bags. And 5 were in her classroom. And it just opened my eyes that it could be her best friend. And we have no idea.
Right.
I think it's just apparent when you look around, or if you do anything in this city, it's in your face. There's no getting around it. It is a predominant issue, and it's here.
Yeah. I work with an organization called Families Forward Charlotte, which I believe our organizations have partnered together.
Yes.
You guys have helped us out. So, but one thing, working with those families is obviously income is an issue, but also like transportation too. Everybody thinks you take for granted how close you are to a store. Somebody like me, I have a car, I got reliable transportation, and I'm within 5 minutes from a store, but not everybody is in that situation. Like to get to a grocery store, they might have to get on a bus. It could be an hour and a half trip. So I think that's a huge issue as well with food insecurity.
Yeah, there are a lot of food deserts. That's what they call them, food deserts in Charlotte, where a grocery store is at least a mile away. And you're right, a lot of people don't have transportation. They might not even be near a bus route, So
Right. So talk about how that led to Feeding Charlotte being created and what you guys are trying to do to combat this.
So how this all started was my husband went on a business trip to California, and he came back and told me that in a lot of restaurants he went to, they had stickers in the window that said, "We are a 0% food waste restaurant." And that just sparked my curiosity. And I was like, what does that mean? So I started doing a bunch of research, started realizing how much food is wasted. It's 40% of all food produced in the United States goes to waste. And I could not believe this. I know, it's insane. So then I started thinking about all the hungry people in Charlotte. And it just seemed so simple to connect those two dots. Why is all this food going to waste when all these people are hungry? It seems like a simple solution. And there you go. And then Mendy and our other founder were right on board with me, feeling just as passionate about both those issues as me. And we just went from there.
Or even if you just think, of course, when Kim threw this out there, my first instinct was a week before I had been at the Harris Teeter, which is literally across the street from a Publix in my neighborhood. When we talk about food deserts, it's so crazy. And this guy is cleaning the buffet. And so they had an Asian buffet. And I would say 50% of those trays were completely full, untouched. And he's just scraping it in the trash. And because of my past, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I think of all these people I've worked with and seen, and we're just scraping it in the trash, not to mention the 3 people standing outside who are hungry. And so when Kim is saying these things, she's exactly right. It's a simple solution. And I think that was one of the things we were the most shocked about when we started researching is this was not happening in Charlotte. And we are a huge city. Why was this not happening here? How are we okay throwing this trash away? It's amazing. And especially when you think, since we really rolled out last year as Food Connection and now as Feeding Charlotte, we have already rescued, let me just want to make sure I get these numbers correct, 18,204 pounds of food.
Wow.
That's huge. But if you break it down into Feeding America's calculations, that is over 15,000 meals. 15,000 meals that were in the trash.
Wow. That's amazing.
Let's forget these little chickens, Kim, these little chickens that gave their lives in vain. You know, and I know that sounds so trivial, but you think we're mass producing livestock, fruits, vegetables. So you have a catering event, 20 chickens are slaughtered. Well, we only needed 8. So what happens to the rest of these 12 chickens that were raised and grown and probably loved by some farmers, butchered, slaughtered, cooked, prepared, and served, and then thrown in the trash? You know, it's just a crazy endless cycle that is needless, actually.
Yeah, I just want to point out the 18,204. That's just in 2020. Since we started as Food Connection, and now we are Feeding Charlotte. But the total since we began is we've rescued 31,248 pounds of food. Wow. We're pretty excited about that.
Man, good work. I mean, congratulations. That's truly incredible.
Thanks.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, some of the institutions that we rescued before we even came into existence were composting, and they were actually paying a company to compost their leftover food. So you paid for this raw ingredients, you paid a chef to prepare it, no one eats it, so then you pay an organization to compost it for you. So it's all this money wasted when we have hungry people in our city. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I do have to say, as we started talking to chefs and directors of dining, every single one of them felt terrible about throwing food away. Absolutely terrible. But obviously, people are very concerned about liability, and a lot of people don't know that there are laws in effect that protect them from liability. There's both federal and state laws. So we kind of educate people about that. And chefs are so busy. Directors of dining are so busy. They don't have the time or the energy to figure out where to donate this food, to bring it to be donated, all of that. And that's where we come in, and they're so happy because we haven't met any chefs yet who don't feel horrible about throwing the food away. They just don't have the time. They don't have the resources to donate it, you know?
Right. I mean, I'm sure that they have by the nature of their work, they have that respect for food. And so I'm sure it tears them apart to think about just being able to waste it. And that actually serves as a great segue. You know, we've been talking about some of these statistics, you know, with 1 in 3, you know, households, and the, you know, just the pounds of food overall, like nationwide. And so can we dial that in though a little bit and talk about what Feeding Charlotte is doing specifically to change these statistics? Like we've started to talk about, you know, that the amount of food that you've gathered so far in just 2 years. So how does this really work? Like how does the operation really, you know, come to fruition?
Sure, of course. So it's actually so simple, you wouldn't even believe it. Basically, we just go to all the places we know of with large dining halls, colleges, universities, caterers, and we talk to them about, you know, trying this out for a week. We always have a trial period, but essentially we pick a day. They will kind of collect their leftovers, usually over the course of 2 or 3 days, keep them refrigerated for us and labeled and all that. And on the designated day and time, we go pick it up, deliver it directly to a nonprofit recipient partner who's 10 minutes, maybe at the most 15 minutes away. The whole process takes 20 minutes. It's so easy. Usually the dining halls, the people in the kitchen, we kind of train them and they know the deal. When we come, they just roll the food right out to us, to our car, load it into our car, we drive, and then it goes directly into the refrigerator at one of our nonprofit recipients. So those people that we partner with feed the food insecure or homeless in the area by either they might have a meal, you know, a weekly meal, or people might just stop in randomly to get food, something like that. But it's so simple, you wouldn't even believe it. It does not take long at all.
Yeah. It's such a simple solution to what appears to be a very complex problem. So that's really cool how you guys like put those pieces together and are now feeding so many people that need it. So most of the food is coming from dining halls, colleges. You're not getting anything from like grocery stores or anything like that?
No, so we focus specifically on prepared foods.
Okay.
And we have gone into some of the grocery stores and asked about if they have buffets, but we haven't quite gotten there yet with them. There are other organizations in Charlotte that rescue produce, dairy, things like that. There's a place called Bulb that we have a relationship with, but we're specific to prepared foods.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we talked about the statistics earlier as well, am I understanding correctly that a lot of children are really one of the most vulnerable populations for food insecurity? Like Mendy, you mentioned, you know, the work you had done within just your own children's schools. Like, is that really a key audience of the work that you're doing, of who it benefits?
Actually, it's probably both. I mean, especially now with COVID, it's just increased. But 1 in 3 families in Mecklenburg County are food insecure. So if you have 3 families, one, they don't know where their next meal is coming from. So that's substantial. And of course, but those parents are hungry too. And of course, if they're going to feed one person, who's it going to be? Their child.
Right.
You know, but then when I think of urban ministry, that's 300 adults every single day. So I believe hunger really doesn't discriminate. I mean, it hits everyone. And so there are tons of children, adults. And again, with COVID, those numbers have just increased.
Yeah, no, that's actually was one of our questions. We want to hear about COVID and how that impacted the work you do. So, you know, it was interesting because, you know, like restaurants, and I don't, do you guys get any food from restaurants?
Not usually, not unless they have an event. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, with I guess events and like catering, with that dying down during COVID, I mean, how did that impact the food you were able to get?
Well, one of the first things that shut down were the institutions, and those were our largest source of food donations. And then caterers were immediately behind them. So we had a couple of caterers that on Monday, we could range from 100 to 300 pounds of food from leftover events over the weekend. So everything ceased. We had no food to rescue to then get to our recipients. So we had to really think out of the box. How are we still going to help these people when the need is even greater at this point when we have nothing to rescue? So we created kind of a grassroots social media campaign. We raised funds on our end. We partnered with a couple of caterers. They raised funds in our name on their end. And we worked together so that we were able to help the caterers purchase raw ingredients, fruits, produce, meats, as well as keep staff on board. And they would then in turn prepare these meals that we could get to our recipients. So it was actually a win-win for both, because the caterers, their business kind of shut down too. You know, they had a couple of things. So we really had to work together. So I think it all brings it back to that community, stepping up. How do we help each other, help everyone? And we just had to think a different strategy so that we can make sure people still had food in their tummies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And that's something that we've noticed, as we've talked with other organizations, it was, despite how difficult this time has been for everyone, it is cool to see so many nonprofits working together. And I think Charlotte is really special in that way. And I mean, you guys have helped, families forward. Like you mentioned the bulb. I talked with them, before all this went down like a year ago. And it's just cool to see how people are using what they're good at. Organizations are able to identify, hey, this is where we're at. This is our space, but how can we help what you're doing, and vice versa. I think that's what's needed to solve these kinds of problems.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, especially when you're faced with a new dilemma. I mean, we've never had these issues before. And so there was no answer. It was, you have to create your own path. Well, it's hard to create that path by yourself. But if we're all on board with one mission, making sure people are fed, that they are housed, that they have the provisions they need, then it just all works together. So there is still so much good in this world. There really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we really should give a shout out to Roots Catering and QC Catering, because they're the ones who really stepped up for us. And we were able to get the same amount of food, if not more, actually, to all of our nonprofit recipient partners throughout the first 4 months of the shutdown. And so they were amazing. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see small businesses coming in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible that, to have those partners and that opportunity. And thank you for clarifying kind of, how you're working with the food providers, if you will. And then I'd just like to follow up really quickly on the food recipients. If, obviously this podcast is geared toward the nonprofit community here in Charlotte. So if another nonprofit is listening that happens to be wondering, if they are, eligible, let's say, to be a recipient, how does that relationship sort of work? Are there any stipulations? Do they pay to, be on that roster or anything like that?
No, they do not pay whatsoever, but that's simple too. I mean, they would just go on our website and contact us. We just kind of talk it through. It's a case by case basis. It kind of depends on the space they have to store food, how many people they serve, if the days and times that we get food right now meet their needs and all that kind of stuff. So we want to serve as many people as we possibly can. So we want everybody to reach out to us, have a conversation with us, and we'll see how we can help.
Yeah. And most of the food that you're getting and giving, it's all like completely fresh. I mean, I know the answer, but just to clarify, like this isn't like half eaten or otherwise undesirable food being donated, right?
No, it's untouched, unserved. Typically in dining hall situations, a lot of it is food that never went out into the buffet. It was just extra. It stayed in the kitchen, stayed in the refrigerator the entire time. It's amazing food. I mean, you would not even, it's the kind of food that we pick it up and we're like, we want this so badly.
Right.
We have some really amazing, talented chefs that we're getting food from. And this food is good, and everybody deserves it. And we also want to give people that feeling that they're deserving of this super high quality catered food, just like everybody else. That kind of brings dignity too, because it's just very flavorful, very nutritious, stuff like that.
That's great. And I'm assuming the chefs are probably happy that their hard work and their resources aren't going to waste. They're going to people that need it.
Definitely. Yes. They're beyond happy, and they're all amazing people. We haven't worked with anybody who's not such a good person. We just have the best relationships with everybody. And and on top of that, I mean, it's beneficial to them as well, not just for the good feeling, but we keep track of how much they donate to us, and we provide tax receipts for that, which is very helpful, especially for caterers. They can deduct those donations from their taxes. So that's helpful for them as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a great benefit. I mean, I know that's not the primary reason they're doing it, but what an awesome, thing to offer back to them in exchange for their service. And I'm just curious, is there typically, is there a certain type of food that gets wasted often more than, I mean, I know we're talking a lot about meals as a whole, but is there any certain thing that you all find ends up making it into your food bank, into the car more than other things? Or is it kind of just a little bit of everything?
Everything, yes. We have had a lot of requests, Kim's laughing, for breads. Breads are, you can get bread everywhere. So that is one thing we have had to kind of steer away from, because our cars would be loaded with bread. So if it's with a meal, we're happy to take it. If you've got lasagna with a loaf of bread, absolutely. That is, it's just kind of an inside giggle, because everyone has bread and it's wonderful, but we need some nutrients to go with that bread as well.
Yeah. And that's what, oh, go ahead.
We try to make sure that everything is a full meal, so if we can't we normally don't just take desserts unless it also comes with a meal, things like that, so that it's a full 3-part meal.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's, talking with, people in this community, it's hard and it's expensive to get, nutrient density, for an affordable price. Like, of course, like you said, everyone loves eating bread. I mean, who doesn't like getting filled up on bread? But getting nutrients is the difficult part. And it's hard to do that affordably. So that's really cool that you guys are conscious of that.
Right.
So I'm curious how you two, being in this world of food rescue and food redistribution, how has it changed your personal views and your personal habits around food waste?
I think it has evolved, but I have always tried to be a very good steward of my resources. So my daughter and I would take our leftovers and we would repackage them and then hit the streets and find someone hungry. Because I always say meatloaf, but it gets in the bag. And so I've always been conscientious of that. But I think doing what we do now has even made it 10 times. I don't want to waste half of an onion anymore. Where before I wasn't going to waste half of our leftovers, but now it's an onion, no big deal. But then the more you know and are aware, it's hard to just throw these little pieces. We've actually compost. We do our own gardening now, things that we really weren't that active in before, because it's just eye-opening. So those things I definitely think have kind of evolved, but it's teaching the next generation. If the next generation starts out with the ideal that there can be no food waste, we may not be in the predicaments we are today. So it is interesting just through our children. My daughter tried to rescue someone's leftover lunch last year at school, and we had to say, I appreciate your efforts, but we can't take their half of a cheeseburger and their pear cup that they didn't touch. And then it actually in turn made her write a letter to her principal saying, hey, I saw 5 Go-Gurts in the trash. What can we do about this?
Wow. So good for her.
I think it's also bringing awareness and that advocacy so that if we can teach and train them while they're young, this will never be an issue. There will be no food waste. which will hopefully result in no hunger. I mean, those are big, lofty ideals, but it's a slow process, and we can start by teaching the next generation.
Yeah, I have to admit, I did not know much about food waste before starting Feeding Charlotte. I didn't really think about it that much, to be honest. I have learned so much, and we're currently in the process of trying to sort of educate the general public on food waste as well via social media posts and things like that. But I did not know that rotting food in a landfill releases methane gas, CO2, and contributes to global warming. I mean, and sometimes I tell people that, very educated people, friends of mine, they didn't know that either. It's a huge issue. And, you know, the tips that we give to people on social media for reducing food waste at home, now I do those too. So I didn't do any of that before, but I make sure that I don't buy too much at the grocery store all at once. I only buy the ingredients for actual recipes, all that kind of stuff that I did not previously do.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think
that's amazing, that spectrum. Oh, you go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I froze. Well, and I was just thinking, you know,
right.
When March hit and then COVID started rolling out, I think it unintentionally happened. People stopped wasting food because the first 2 months you thought, oh my goodness, am I going to be able to get another pack of chicken? Or are they still going to have cheese? And you really didn't want to go in and out to the grocery store. So it was a tiny silver lining maybe, but people started taking awareness and actually thinking about what you're going to use. You know, I use spices that I've probably had for 5 years. We emptied them. And they could have sat there for another 5 years or went bad. So it's little slow ways, you know, when you don't know that you're going to have more, you take credit of what you have and you use it very intelligently. So those are little things, and it's just creating that awareness. Eventually, we hope to do some more lunch and learns where we are advocating. We don't really want to be just a nonprofit organization. We want to be a movement. We want to change the needle. We don't want Charlotte to have 50% food waste. We want them to have zero. So it's creating awareness, because sometimes once you learn something, it's hard to keep doing those old habits because you know it's right. And it's like Kim said, once you know that it's creating this methane gas and it's climate, how do you do this? So you start composting and you think of new ways and new paths to make change.
That's great. Yeah, one small step at a time, I think.
That's fascinating too.
Sorry, there's a lag. Go ahead, Jordan.
That's all right. No, it's no problem. Sorry about that. There is a lag, so I didn't realize. I was just going to say that I think it's fascinating what you were both talking about, the spectrum of this, how it's affected you both on a personal level, but then the things that you've learned and how big that has grown into, you know, Kim, you were talking about like the effects on climate change and how, you know, like food really seems to, the way you all have talked about it, I hadn't really thought about how pervasive it is and how many different other causes it touches, you know, homelessness and, you know, food insecurity, obviously, but then also some of those other issues like, you know, global warming and things like that. So any other simple things that you would offer up that people can do to help reduce their own food waste? If some of those things maybe from your social media?
Yeah, one thing that I started to do was if I go grocery shopping and I'm putting my groceries away, I make sure to move what's in the back of the refrigerator to the front and put the new stuff in the back. That has helped me a lot because I used to have all that stuff that would go in the back of your fridge. You would forget about it and it would just, you'd find it one day, 3 months later, and it's disgusting. That has helped me a lot to make sure that I move that stuff up front. That's just one really easy tip.
That's a good one.
My generic one that is so silly is wrap your spinach in paper towels. Those little things. I kept buying spinach and it was wilted in 2 days.
Yeah, it goes by so quickly.
So quickly. And so if you think, if that is the small tip for spinach, there's a small tip for strawberries and there's a small tip for cucumbers. It's just knowing what to do, with all of these things. And just knowing to wrap it in a paper towel can make it last another week. So it's opening up that awareness of just these little things that we can do at home.
Yeah. No, those are good tips. Yeah, I like both of those, moving the old groceries to the front, and then wrapping spinach. I always have a problem with this wilted spinach. Yeah. Now this might be a loaded question, so we can skip this if you want to. But like, if everyone gets better at reducing food waste, and restaurants, dining halls, caterers have no leftovers, how do you think that translates to getting food insecure people quality food?
It's huge. So one of the more exciting things that's happening with us recently is we are starting to use software for Food Rescue US. So we will still monitor that, but it will take us just a tiny bit more out of the equation. So people who have leftover food will be able to post it. And then the organizations that need food will be able to go in and claim the food. So if that happens, let's say everybody knows about this software, this technology in Charlotte, and that happens, I think we could sufficiently feed all food insecure people. No doubt. I mean, there's definitely not a lack of food. It's a food distribution problem. Yep. There's enough food to go around. We just need a way to figure out how to make it go around.
Yeah. And especially if you could get like grocery stores in on this, and maybe even restaurants, because I mean, restaurants also throw away so much food at the end of the day. If you get everybody on this, like you said, it's a distribution problem. We clearly have enough food in the country. It's getting it to the right people.
Yes.
Are there any upcoming food needs in particular, given that we're entering into the holiday season? Does that really change anything for your operations?
Not really. I mean, there are so many fabulous organizations in Charlotte that help during the holidays. So there's nothing very specific as needs. We are getting back slowly to more and more rescued food as things open back up, which is great. We are going to start with UNC Charlotte next week, picking up some leftover food from them. So we're getting kind of back into the swing of all the food being rescued. I can't think of any specific holiday needs. No, I mean, I think a lot of our partner organizations do a great job of handling that. And people in Charlotte always step up big time during the holidays and help everybody. So.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, if you're at a holiday event and you have tons of leftovers or unused prepared foods, please let us know. So it may actually be flipped. Maybe this will be busier for us to be able to rescue food if parties and events are happening. Don't throw it away.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Yeah. Now, as far as feeding Charlotte, where do you all need the most help?
Spreading the word. I don't think that people realize that we are here, first off, and then they may not be completely sure what Feeding Charlotte does. So we kind of threw our tagline at the bottom: food is love, not waste, just to kind of wrap it up in a nice, pretty package. But we need people, organizations, caterers, institutions, restaurants, grocery stores, to know that we're here, that they don't have to throw this food away, that we are happy. And as Kim has said, it's so simple. And we make it so easy for them that it's easier to give it to us than to throw it away. So yes, we just need people to know that Feeding Charlotte is here and we want your unused food.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anything else that we didn't touch on that you guys just want to get out there?
Not really. We recently became a Amazon Smile.
Oh yeah.
You know about Amazon Smile? We're on there now. So especially for the holiday season, if people put Feeding Charlotte as their Amazon Smile charity, that would help us a lot if you're ordering a lot of stuff from Amazon. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so people can easily access that.
Thanks.
It's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, any other places that you want people to be aware of to find you, whether it's to volunteer, to donate, any of those types of things? We want to make sure that we know your website, your social media handles, all of that good stuff.
Yes. Social media, we're Feeding Charlotte, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Our website, sign up for our newsletter so that you can know what's going on, what we're doing, how we're working. In 2021, we hope to start doing more serve days where we can actually get out and meet those that we're serving. The time and place we are in the world right now just makes it a little more difficult. But again, eventually we're going to have a great app software system where we can have rescuers. We can actually have volunteers who want to support our mission and be in on this movement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I love what you guys are doing. I think it's, like you said, it's genius, but it's so simple. And I think it can really, is going to continue to change Charlotte. So thank you for all that you are doing. I will let you guys know when we decide to release everything. We'll do a few social media posts to kind of promote your organization. And in terms of the recording, I think if you hit stop, I don't know where the recording goes, but and if you can't find it, if you kind of like lose it, we can use the Zoom audio. But if you do find like where that goes, we'll send you a link to like upload the audio file too, so that we can use that for editing.
Perfect.
We do have a 14-year-old who will probably be able to find it for me instantly. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Same. I also have a 14-year-old.
Okay.
Who can help me? I will not know. I'll be like,
okay.
I don't know where that is. Thank you guys so much for having us.
This was awesome.
Really fun.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you too.
I know.
Yeah, you too.
So nice.
And we'll meet in person someday, I'm sure.
One day.
I hope so. Jordan, thanks for being a C20 coach also. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. That's actually C20 is how this all started for Andy attending. Was it last year or 2 years ago, Andy?
Yeah, the last in-person one.
Yeah, the last year. And then, this was my first year coaching. I was assigned to City Startup Labs. And but I remember your practice and we tuned in for the live night and everything. Well, the semi-live night.
Exactly.
But that's congratulations. Cool. It was so awesome learning about the organization through that channel. And yes, thank you all for just, everything that you're doing in the community and sharing your story today. We hope that our little effort to get the word out, like you said, it is part of that bigger movement about people just knowing about you all. So hopefully Luminosity can help with that. We'll let you know as soon as we start spreading the word about your episode.
Thank you so much.
Bless you guys. Thank y'all so much.
All right.
For all you do. All right. Have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Okay.
All
right. Well, that was our first four-way, and it seemed to work okay. There's a couple lags there, but.
Yeah. It was great to actually be able to, it is different trying to do a panel on Zoom, trying not to step on each other's toes, but it was really nice hearing from both of them, especially the opportunity that we had to chat with them about their personal experience of, how this work has impacted them at home and, where they were before they started doing this for this organization and now where they are after, I think speaks to what they were saying about how all of us can do these little things, that ultimately make a big difference.
Yeah. And I don't think it has to be something where tomorrow I'm never going to waste another piece of food again. I mean, that would be great, but I think that can be kind of overwhelming for people. And it's taking little steps, each day, creating good habits that reduce food waste. And then, like with her, it was first, I don't want to waste, half a sandwich. And then it's, I don't want to waste half an onion. I don't want to waste these spices. And you progressively learn, more and more how to get better. And I think that's huge. And I love it. It's such an easy simple concept of what they're doing, but they're feeding so many people. So I hope, restaurants, stores can get on board with this. And I know they're putting together full meals, but I feel like there's a way that they can figure out how to harness other types of food. Like from the grocery store is the first thing that comes to mind, because they throw away garbage, bins full, truckloads of food.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting to see how, how they'll begin to tackle, ingredient based thing. Although I know that they mentioned, there are some other nonprofits in town that are doing more like the produce and veggie side of things. So it's always interesting to see, like kind of the niche that different people are tackling within the city. But also I think, it speaks a lot to what they were saying about the efforts you can make now and, for our generation, probably up, and maybe, the generation after you and I, it's a transition, to think about this thing, but to actually raise the next generation that just like, it's something everyone's aware of and everyone does. Like we're conscious of our food waste at like on
right.
At that large of a scale. I think that's really interesting that they pointed out that goal too, of not just being, getting people to think about it differently now who are already responsible for grocery shopping. But if you teach that to these kids that aren't even, the shoppers in the family or the diners in the family yet, how much is that going to impact change?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like we've talked about with so many people on here is, not only are you impacting, that family or whoever you're helping, but that's going to hopefully provide better, education, better, better opportunity for the kids. Like they're going to learn, they're going to be raised in a different world than, their parents. And, hopefully that is, compounded, the good that they're doing.
Right. And it sounds like the technology is rising to meet the occasion. I think that's super awesome that they're looking into this app, or software that's going to allow people sign up, hey, I have food, and someone else just gets to, to cut out that middleman. I mean, she was saying that was kind of the simplest part for them. So it's more like they'll, evolve into just this like liaison of just making sure that the resources out there. Like it's not about, how big their cars are, because I'm sure that's probably a consideration, the way they've been doing it so far is like,
right.
I didn't ask, but like, or did you all like switch to minivans or something so you could get more food in the car?
Right.
So yeah, I think that's super awesome to like empower people to maybe, do deliveries themselves and just be, a rep for them, but not necessarily, a full-time staff. It seems like a much more agile kind of model.
Yeah. I don't know what this app looks like, but what I'm envisioning and what it sounded like is there would be, caterers, schools, people that have food to give away. They would, show their availability, and then, a nonprofit or a shelter could say, hey, we have a need for food. And then she said rescuers, like a rescuer could log on and be like, oh, I need to connect these two people. Like they have food, they need food. I'm going to go out. I got, a couple hours today to go do that. Let me go, do some good. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's a lot like, I think of the delivery services. And again, this is just what I'm picturing in my mind. We didn't see like a visual of this, but it's like a delivery service, but like for, food that would have been wasted instead of, or, ordering a pizza. It's like they're, to use that same item, there is a pizza. Someone over here needs one, and like connecting them. But I mean, obviously they were though more focused on healthy foods. And I love that meal approach. Like they said, like, there's a lot of excess bread probably from bakeries or, maybe some desserts, but the fact that they're intentional about trying to make sure they can package everything as a complete meal, because if someone's food insecure, do we really just want to send them home, with just like a bunch of donuts or something like that? So I hadn't, until we started talking to them about it, even having read about their mission and, the short pitch that Kim was able to do as part of, C20 still didn't really like tell me that full story. I didn't know that side of it, that, they try to commit to like full meals and things. So yeah, just really, really awesome what they're doing and how they're doing it, and their ability to change with COVID. Like so many of the people we've interviewed, over the summer and into fall now.
Yeah, so many people have had to learn to adapt. So, go check out Feeding Charlotte, follow their Instagram, Facebook, get connected with their newsletter, and like take their advice, use the tips, help reduce food waste, make small changes. And, hopefully when this thing comes out, they have opportunities for volunteering, then people can go, get involved.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
all right.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Feeding Charlotte.